Paul, what are some of the risks or weaknesses in your business model? With almost 100,000 students now, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this growth must make quality control difficult.
Yeah, it's actually up to 135,000 now, and I think that makes us the largest university in the country. And for us, it's really thinking about the use and deployment of technology to make sure that we're able to give students highly individualized experiences at scale. That's the trick. And we're relentless about data in terms of monitoring performance. It's not a great predictor, as Clay would say, of the future, but it lets you get a very good snapshot of how you're doing today. So I think we have 75 people on our data analytics team, 35 in the US, another 40 in India. So we measure everything, and we're monitoring all the time. We do qualitative monitoring all the time. And I think, for us, it's always understanding where the technology yields the greatest value and then where human factors have to stay front and center. So oftentimes, for example, we're in refugee camps in Rwanda, in Kenya, Malawi, South Africa, and Lebanon. In those cases, we have on-the-ground partners where our deployment of technology gives them access to an education they wouldn't otherwise have. There are 65 million refugees in the world. Less than 1% have access to higher ed. And it's the wraparound services to the human. So I think finding the human factors in this is always the critical piece for us. We work with homeless kids in LA County, South Central, kids who have timed out the foster care system. Same thing, the right amount of technology that allows us to give them what they wouldn't get. And this is really informed by Clay's work on, if you're doing something disruptive, do it with an underserved population that is either non-consuming or under-consuming. So if you take a look at the refugees we serve, their next best option is nothing at all. And the next best option, by the way, is hopelessness. Like this isn't just education, this is about the work of hope.
It's amazing what you're doing. Clay, as he was talking, I was thinking, how does Paul's success relate to Harvard Business School or, an institution of higher learning, where these ideas may not be so embraced?
Well, I guess I can say that we will pray for all of you guys and ask you please to pray for the Harvard Business School. Because if you just allow your costs to go up and up and up, at some point people down below will say, I don't actually need everything they're selling me. And we had a very interesting experience there. I got a call from the CEO of Purdue University. And Purdue, we know, is in West Lafayette in Indiana. But this wasn't Purdue, but it was the phone call came from Salisbury, Maryland. And there's a company there called Purdue that raised chickens. And they had gotten sick of the learning about management from the Harvard Business Review. And so we've set up our own university called Purdue University. And they invited me to come down to see, how do you do this? And holy cow. He said last week, somebody called up and said, swore at the board of directors and said, in November, we have to teach our board of directors 3 days of strategy. And he said, I asked him, how do you teach 3 days of strategy? It takes us a semester at Harvard. And he invited me down and showed how you start on page 1. What course do you have to teach? And I checked strategy. How much time do you have to teach it? 3 days. How good a teacher are you? Do you need CDs, or can you teach by the case method? And he said, I need CDs. Does this have to be customized for anybody? And he went down and clicked chicken. And it's a very sophisticated company, several $billion in revenue. And I said, well, how do you teach this if you don't have the Harvard Business Review in your pickpocket? And he said, well, you know, I know this guy in Colorado Springs, and they have a CD on this part of strategy, and I have a friend who teaches this, and we get together several times a year and share each other's ways of teaching people how to, and they are starting at the low end, starting to teach management, customized exactly when people need it, exactly what they need, and they bring you back when you know, and that's different than the Harvard Business School. I love HBS, you know, don't get me wrong, but that's a different world that management is facing, and truly, it's exciting.
This is closing the gap, Paul, between what students learn and what employers need and want, right?
Yeah, and it's closing the gap in a way that I think traditional higher ed has resisted. It's driven employers a little bit crazy, and now we see really, if you were to go to one of the big sort of ed tech innovation conferences like GSV, you know, the last 2 years, I would say that the greatest amount of tension has been in that space between higher education and the workforce, particularly now that work is changing so dramatically, and there's a war for talent. So yeah, I think this is ripe for innovation and disruption.